Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, Thriving with Tresh. Personal topic on pregnancy to postpartum. We're going to be covering my overall experience. It's been quite a journey just trying to reclaim myself, nest into this new season of motherhood, and trying to figure it all out. Everything from the mindset shift to the physical shift to all the changes in between. This is going to be a moment to just yap and talk through my experience, and hopefully you can either identify with some of my experience or just get an idea of what to look forward to. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Let's talk first feelings. When I first found out I was pregnant, I already had a sense that I was pregnant. There was a couple weeks where I was just really experiencing extreme fatigue and tiredness. So I knew something was going on. But it wasn't until the nausea kicked in, that's when I said, all right, it's probably time to take a test. So took a test, and I was hoping to surprise my husband with the results. But as I'm taking the test, he just happens to walk into the bathroom. So in that moment, we found out at the same time. I think my first reaction was just general shock, not because I'm pregnant, because obviously we were doing the deed to have a baby. But I was at that point where I was ready to focus on a lot more things that pertain to me, my business, my career, and just wanted to hone in on that. And finding out I was pregnant in that moment, I can just see my life flash before my eyes. And I was like, okay, this is about to get serious. So initial reactions, I hated it. I hated pregnancy. I was sick the entire first semester, also very anxious the entire first semester, just trying to make it through because, of course, until you hit that 13-week mark, you're not supposed to tell anyone. And I was in such a state of shock that I definitely told my big sister, and I was just like, dude, what do I even do? She was helpful, but in general, she was far away with us living states over from my family. It was an experience that I didn't anticipate to do alone. Of course, I had my husband, but it was kind of lonely in the beginning because it was a lot of waiting and lots of doctor's appointments trying to figure out what to do, how to do it, and where to get it all done. I was not ready to give up my independence, and I knew having a child would do that. So that was probably where a lot of my concerns came in. I was ready to do things for myself, but here comes baby to rock my world. It wasn't until I got to end of second trimester where I could start to feel like a human again, and I wasn't sick all the time, and I can actually consume food, that I started to enjoy the experience. But I think in general, just not having control over my body and having to care for a child within my body was a lot. I think I was pretty numb throughout the entire experience in the beginning, just because I knew my life was going to change. As someone who grew up around a lot of siblings and cousins and all the above, I've seen what it takes to be a parent. And yeah, it was a responsibility that I had to make sure I was ready for too. I would say one. So of course, I was struggling to really take care of myself because I couldn't consume many things. So eating was a struggle, and just making sure that I was getting any sort of vitamins and nutrients. I couldn't even keep the prenatals down at one point. So as much as it's not recommended, I definitely swapped over to more of a gummy prenatal just so I can actually consume something and keep it down. Prior to, getting pregnant, I would say that I was in a really good place with my nutrition, honing in on things that were going to support my hormone and my adrenal levels, mastering my vitamin and supplement routine. And I was in relatively great shape at that time. So I did carry that over into pregnancy, but I got to a point where some of those vitamins and supplements I was taking were no longer recommended for when you're pregnant. And then just in general, not being able to keep anything down, it was kind of a waste. When I went to my first couple appointments, I was told that one of the good combos to kind of give a try to help with the nausea was the Unisom and B6. So I did start to introduce that as well. I was able to keep that down a bit more. As far as exercise, for the first trimester, I really couldn't do much because I was consuming such little food. I was working full time, so I was just trying to stay afloat and keep things going. And it was a lot, just trying to maintain my sanity and prep for baby and adjust to all the new normals. So wellness took a backseat at that time. And as much as I didn't want it to, I didn't really have a choice. So there was definitely a pivot in my wellness. I would say that the cravings for me didn't kick in until about the 27, 28 week mark. And that's when I had an insatiable appetite for Indian food. So within the first and second trimester, it was hard to consume anything. So I just made sure whatever I was consuming did include protein because that was key. I would say that the cravings for me didn't kick in until about the 27, 28 week mark. And that's when I had an insatiable appetite. And I don't know, I think my baby was bound for spice because during that time, all I can crave was Indian food. I mean, I was eating it 2-3 times a week, and my poor husband was just like, anything you want, babe. I would say other cravings during the first and second trimester. I would say anything that could keep down. Chick-fil-A. Yeah, I ate a lot of Chick-fil-A wraps and drank a lot of Chick-fil-A lemonade in the process. I don't know about anyone else, but it ended up being the only thing I can keep down, and I was mad at it. Outside of that, I ate a lot of saltine crackers. I had to make sure that first thing in the morning, I ate those crackers and just really try to put something on my stomach so to help with the nausea. The mornings that I could, it was helpful, but the mornings I couldn't, I was definitely hurting. In general, I tried to maintain as healthy of a diet as I could. I definitely found myself falling in that category where I was really putting emphasis on nutrients and health and all of the things to keep baby sustained. So let's talk mindset shifts. I think when I first found out I was pregnant, there was definitely a mindset shift. Like, okay, now I'm taking care of my body for not just myself, but for both of us. I knew that the lifestyle I was living was going to have to shift. Of course, we were, dinks or whatever, double income, no kids. So we bought whatever we wanted. We did whatever we wanted. We went wherever we wanted. We went on really nice dates and trips and etc. So we knew, of course, there's going to be some shift in our priorities. I personally was not ready to give that up. And I think that's why I spent the latter half of my pregnancy just trying to figure out what this new normal is going to be for me. We found out we were having a girl, and just one by one, all of the various items on our registry started coming in, really starting to nest and create a space for her. That's when I knew I was kind of ready. Self-care looked a lot different. I got to a point where taking a shower was the most tiring part of my day. So just doing those small things, taking showers, drinking a lot of water, body armor, just to keep my hydration levels good. Taking a lot of naps, going on walks as I needed them for my own mental sanity, and just spending time with my husband and just talking to the people that I love. I had friends who were either pregnant, recently pregnant, or have hopes and dreams of becoming pregnant. So I ended up spending a lot of time talking to them on the phone. They would check in, just asking about my experience. So while my village wasn't necessarily in my town that I currently live, I definitely had friends and family that I can lean on during this time. Those were the self-care things that I needed, and that really got me through a lot of it. So I was fortunate enough to work for a company that did offer paid maternity leave. So you did get 6 weeks. It was helpful. I wasn't sure if I was going to take more time, less time, but prepping for that maternity leave was interesting. I, of course, played like a pivotal part on our team. So prepping my maternity document so that they knew where things were as I was going to be out, making sure that I try to wrap up as many projects as possible before leaving so that I could be at peace with baby once she got here instead of having to worry about work. And I had concerns about whether or not I would be able to go back after, because you often hear that women struggle to go back to the workplace after they have their kids. And I knew I wanted to go back to the workforce because I'm a busy bee by nature, and I never thought that full-time motherhood was something that I wanted. Being a stay-at-home mom, it does not appeal to me. So I knew I wanted to go back. I prepped my leave. Baby came a little sudden towards the end. I was developing preeclampsia and dealing with a lot of swelling and all the above. A lot of those NST appointments that I was going to, a lot of checking for baby's movement and everything. I remember just walking to one of those final appointments. My doctor came in and she was just like, hey, call your husband and go to the hospital. The baby's coming. So she was probably 3 weeks early than when I anticipated starting my maternity leave, somewhere around there. And that jump-started motherhood. I remember calling my husband saying, hey, doctor said, meet me at the hospital. And I drove myself to the hospital, and my husband was grabbing our suitcase and everything. And he literally had to kick out the cleaning crew to come meet me at the hospital. So they were very accommodating. So shout out to Amber. It was exciting, also scary. So I headed over to the hospital. Of course, I hadn't eaten anything all day. So in that moment, all I could think about was, how do I get back to some semblance of normalcy? Can I please have something to consume in this moment? My husband got there pretty quickly to the hospital and met me there. All right, how do we get this baby out? My blood pressure has skyrocketed. There was concerns around that. And they started to give me medication to induce my labor. And at that point, nothing was working. I was starving. This is where my heightened fear came in because one, being a Black woman, being pregnant, the risk is already so great. And then two, I felt like I wasn't ready for her to come. So in that moment, there was a lot of stress and concern. And then three, this was a new experience. My life was about to change. So mentally being ready for it and making sure that my life was not in danger, make sure baby was not in danger, especially knowing that preeclampsia, this big health concern, is forcing me to deliver early. So in that moment, I had my full-on plan of what I wanted for my delivery. And I basically abandoned the whole script. Screw the natural birth, screw everything. Let's opt for the C-section. I was just like, get this baby out of me. I'm starving. I cannot eat another cup of Jell-O. So please, let's move this along here. So the next morning, new doctor on shift, he comes in. He's like, hey, let's go ahead and check your cervix, see how dilated you are. And I was still at zero. So he's like, well, I can continue to give you, various inducing methods and introduce like the Foley balloon or whatever. And I was just like, no, thank you. Get me in the OR. There was a lot of concern because obviously there's a lot of healing that goes involved with having a cesarean. That is a major surgery. But in that moment, it felt like it was what was right for me. I was never against it. And I didn't want it to get to a place where I had to have it out of emergency. So I proactively just chose this option and said, hey, let's get her out. And at this point, my blood pressure was still skyrocketing throughout the entire process. And yeah, so I remember them coming in after we made a decision saying, hey, we're having a baby today. Let's go ahead and get you prepped. And prior to going into the OR, my husband got suited up, met me in the OR. I had a playlist at that point, and if anyone knows me, then you know that that playlist was definitely full of country songs. I got on the table. My anesthesiologist was literally a miracle worker. I felt absolutely nothing. And during the operation, there was my doctor, and there was a resident in training at that time. And I knew originally in my birth plan that I did not want anyone that's like student level, but it was who was there at the time. And I was just like, hey, all I care about right now is a safe delivery. Get this baby out of me. All the nurses kept asking like, oh, what are you going to name her? What are you going to name her? And we had a name in mind. But because I kept hearing it throughout the pregnancy, I thought I did not want that to be her name, but I wasn't sure anymore. So we held off on sharing it with everyone. As we're wheeling into the operation room, it begins to snow. And the nurse just made a joke and she's like, oh, it's snowing. Like, maybe we should call her Snow. So while on the operation table and then going through the process, they started calling her Snow. So I thought that was really cute. So the process begins. I can hear the doctor and the resident talking. And of course, the cloth is up. I can't see anything going on there. But I can smell the burning flesh as they're cutting through the layers. I have a very sensitive sense of smell. So smelling that was off-putting. But at that point, I was just singing my country tunes and waiting for this process to be over. All I wanted to hear at that point was the cry of the baby and to know that she was safe and it was all going to be over. So it was very friendly while he was there. I was just making jokes to the doctor and I was just like, hey, while you're down there, go ahead and do a couple snips and tuck. And he was like, no, you're perfect. You don't need any of it. So as he's talking the resident through the procedure, I'm hearing all of it. And I was deeply fascinated by it. I don't know, maybe that's just a science nerd in me, but hearing them talk through the procedures and what instrument they're using next. And I think that would freak most people out, but I found it very fascinating and was kind of at that point very interested to see what was happening. So I was kind of sad in that moment that the cloth was up, but it's probably for the best. At that point, just waiting for the cry baby. So they got her out. She was nice and safe. Kept her attached to the umbilical cord because, of course, I want to make sure that delayed cord clamping happened. They really respected my desires in that moment, so I appreciated that. My husband sitting over here next to me, he was originally supposed to cut the cord. He was like, no, I don't think I want to go down there and see any of that. And I was like, I respect that. They clean her up and they bring her over to us. And at that point, I could not feel any more relieved. And I was very excited to be done. Cesareans can be hard to recover from. But I had a very positive experience. Like, yes, after that 24-hour window and the meds started to wear off, that there was pain. But of course, they gave me meds as needed. My wishes and demands are really respected. So shout out to my medical team. But coming home with baby, this is where the postpartum stuff started to kick in. I knew that I was going to rock this motherhood thing. But while in the hospital, breastfeeding became something that I did not know how to work at. I always hear people say that, oh, breastfeeding is a lot of work, etc. So the lactation consultant was coming in my room. I was calling for her, just like, am I doing this right? Does this look right? And then she'll be like, oh, it looks good this time. Doesn't look good this time. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. As we're getting ready to leave the hospital, of course, baby had a bit of latch issues. She didn't have any tongue ties or anything, but she ended up losing a bit of weight. So there was some concern. And in that moment, I felt like I failed because the next words out of the pediatrician's mouth was, oh, why don't you try formula? And I'm like, ma'am, that is not what I signed up for. But I listened. I went home. I gave myself time for my milk to come in. She was a few weeks early, so I guess my milk supply was still trying to come in at that time. I did go home, did supplement with formula. The first few days of being with her were interesting. Of course, she was sleeping a lot. I think leaving the hospital was really hard. I just remember the entire drive home bawling my eyes out. And my poor husband's just like, what is wrong with you? How can I support you? Like, what do you need? And I'm just like, I don't know. I do not want to be crying right now, but this is a lot. So I think it was just like the major hormone shift happening in that moment. And when I got home, I obviously didn't have time prior to just make sure all the ducks were in a row. And even our poor pups, like when we left them home, we barely even had a plan of how they were going to be taken care of for walks and feeds. So our friends came over while we were at the hospital just to make sure that they were let out and fed them for the day and whatnot. So shout out to our friends. And coming home, those first few nights, it was interesting. I was finally glad that, okay, there's a physical baby to show that this entire time that my body was going through this transformation is now here. And I knew my husband was going to be the best father ever. Like, it's something that he's always talked about wanting to do. But I still didn't know where I stood. And I was trying to figure out how to reclaim myself. And I think I was just trying to do it too quickly. So during that first few weeks, my mom actually came into town. It was already planned for her to come and spend like a month with us to help with baby and help with the adjustment. So having her was really good for us. But her and I definitely bumped heads because, of course, my mom was coming in doing what she expected to be doing, which is taking care of me, taking care of baby, taking care of all the things. And I was just like, well, I'm trying to find my new sense of normal. If you're doing everything for me, you're going to drive me crazy. So how can we work together? So then having to sit down with my mom, having a conversation of like, hey, how about you ask me what I want instead? So that was tough because then in that moment, having to put my mom in her place, like, yeah, put my mom in her place. And anyone who knows me and knows my relationship with my mom, that we're locked in, okay, we're best friends, but she definitely drives me nuts. But having her was helpful. I really struggled to eat once I was home. I don't know if it was just the meds or because afterwards, of course, I was on a series of medications to still bring my blood pressure down. On top of it, I was on the medication for the pain meds. I don't even remember exactly what it was at this point, but I was on the pain meds plus the cocktail of blood pressure meds to help bring my blood pressure down. And of course, I had a lot of follow-ups for myself and the baby in those early weeks just to make sure I was good, make sure baby was good. And once we got my blood pressure down and I went back in for a 6 weeks checkup, they give you that form to fill out to ask you, how are you doing with your postpartum? And I remember the doctor coming in after I took the quiz, and he said, I have grave concerns because the average score on this is usually about a 17. There's some amount of mommy blues, there's some amount of concerns and fears that comes with having a baby, especially when it's your first one. You scored a 30, so I'm concerned. And in that moment, I was just like, I knew something was going on. I knew I was not feeling my best. I knew I was struggling mentally and physically and all the above. But taking that quiz, I can definitely see in those moments that I was really going through it. So I left the doctors that day with the prescription for anti-anxiety depression meds. And I knew in my heart of hearts there had to have been a more natural way to get to it, especially as someone who is a holistic nutritionist. So it felt like it was going against my nature to take these meds. And I'm not anti-meds in any way, shape, or form, but I knew, knowing what I know, that there is a way to do it more naturally. But in that moment, I could not prioritize finding a natural alternative for myself. I just knew that the best thing I could do was start to take the meds, see if it would help. And then during that process, find ways to support my mental health and my physical health as well. So started taking the meds, started to see some improvement in how I was feeling. as I was taking the meds, it was approaching that time to go back to work. So there was a lot of fear and anxiety on what I was going to be doing with the baby, like during the day when I was working, because I do work from home. So yeah, it was, those early postpartum days were a lot. And because of the nature of my breastfeeding journey, I did start off with doing a combination of pumping and putting baby to the breast. So that was good. But because there was concerns about her weight, I ended up doing a lot more pumping so that I could actually see how much milk she was consuming. And that gave me some peace of mind for sure. In those earlier weeks, trying to put her down in her bassinet was a lot for me. I found myself, and this is probably where I should have really known that something was going on. I found myself for hours just staring at the baby cam, just wondering if she's okay, is she breathing? Because of course, SIDS is a big thing that everyone talks about. And, just in general, I experienced a lot of anxiety. So yeah, those days were rough. Of course, not a lot of sleep, but to some degree getting more sleep than probably most newborn moms would, because I had the support of my mom and my husband and everything. So yeah, those early postpartum days were definitely not for the faint of heart, but we made it through. And that's when things started to get a bit more fun. In addition to taking the meds, I was making sure I was getting a lot more sunshine. So I introduced a lot more vitamin D to my diet through vitamins, as well as introducing a lot more organ meat and such to make sure that I was meeting my iron and my vitamin D needs as well. And getting out the house, I didn't have any issues with my C-section recovery. I want to say probably maybe a month in, I was already going on my first hike with baby and my mom. We went out to one of the trails nearby, and that was fun. There was some slight soreness, but of course that was expected. But in general, I just felt like I was slowly getting back to myself. Okay, I went back to work around 9 weeks postpartum. It was originally supposed to be 8, and we ended up having to put one of our dogs to sleep. So that in itself was traumatizing for me. So I decided to take another week off. During that time, that extra week, we actually took a little small trip with baby. It was the first time traveling with the baby over an hour distance. And we went to see our friends, her godparents in South Carolina. It was a good time to get away, especially from our house, and that we just lost our pet. But that's a story for another day. Of course, I don't want to get sad on this video, but yeah, that was hard dealing with postpartum grief of losing a pet. Went back to work finally that following week. First week back, I was expecting to just kind of ease into things. But so much had happened while I was gone that coming back required me to whip it into shape and get the ball rolling again. So of course, everyone knew I had a baby, so they gave grace where they could, but the job was very demanding and required a lot out of me. I think I was able to maintain kind of baby schedule with taking care of her, stopping as I needed to, planning my meetings around her naps and such. When she started to crawl at that point, so around the 5.5 mark, she started crawling really early. Okay, it was game changing at that point, and she required a lot more of me. She started to drop naps. So that time I needed to start giving her more attention, and it was tough trying to maintain a full workload and be ready to mother on call. So at that point, my husband started working some half days at work, and that was interfering with his schedule and his progress at work as well. So we just had a nice conversation around what does support look like during this time? Do we want to consider daycare? Do we want to consider some sort of nanny, babysitter, comes to us situation? As someone who's had a lot of experience working in daycares and such, I knew that I wanted to avoid a daycare as much as possible, at least while she was still young. So my thing is keep your kids at home if you can, at least until 2. So that was our goal. And I went on the hunt to find a nanny. Finding the right one took a bit of time, took a few months. We had a few here and there. We had to drop in sitters. As my calendar started to get busier, I was in a lot more meetings. And of course, baby was becoming more demanding. And eventually we found, I would call her unicorn. Shout out to Sammy. And having Sammy was great. I could start to stabilize a bit more in my needs and making time for myself while having support for baby. And someone who generally loves kids. And it was just fantastic to have around all the time. So, and at that point, another human in the house talked to and who knew what I was going through because she was actively experiencing with me. So it was nice. So started to find my new normal, my new baseline. And that allowed me to, by having our part-time nanny, that allowed me to take my calls freely, not really have to worry about baby. I would constantly go and check throughout the day just to make sure she's good, make sure baby is good, and answer any questions that may come up. But I was also able to try to start to find time to work out again. So while having her, I was able to, whether it was going like a midday walk when I was taking a break from my work and having calls, or maybe planning my workout. So towards the end of her shift, when she was getting ready to leave us, I would do like a Peloton ride. But yeah, so as I was saying, I was able to do like a 20-30 minute Peloton ride just to sort of get my body back in the groove of working out. I knew it had been so long since I was working out because I had to stop working out while I was pregnant just because it was taking a lot out of me. So I wasn't just recovering from postpartum, but I was also recovering from muscle loss and going through pregnancy and everything and dealing with the body dysmorphia and everything. I'm trying to find little pockets of time where I've started to get more movement into my day, whether it was going on a walk with baby with a stroller or going to the park, going here and there, jumping on the Peloton. Wasn't quite ready to go back to the gym just yet, but yeah, just making time for myself again, taking power naps if I needed it, to start having time for myself again and start to feel like I can be a good mom and start to balance my own self and form me a new routine. So getting support was necessary. That's because both our families are from different coasts. So we're in Virginia, we're in a state where it's really just us. So we have to create our own village. So finding our babysitter and part-time nanny situation was really helpful for us. And I'm grateful that it was something that we could afford because it is a luxury at the end of the day. And it was a sacrifice we were willing to make. So that made it even better. And shout out to my husband. He definitely stepped up in multiple ways. I have a very involved husband when it comes to our baby, and most women dream of that, so I don't take it for granted. He's definitely a father of the year. My sister jokes to the point where she says that our baby has two moms with how involved my husband is, so shout out to him. But self-worth and identity was something still on the table because this was all shifting as baby was reaching new milestones. We were getting a different version of baby, and I needed to be a different version of myself, being a different version of a mother, being a different version of a spouse and everything, and wanting to get back to the things that I love, all of my hobbies, back to my business that I had to put to the side for X period of time while I was going through pregnancy. It was a struggle, and balance does not exist. And I definitely had days where I felt guilty for either not giving my job enough or not giving baby enough or even not having time for my husband. We definitely went through that ship sailing through the night, passing each other phase where both of us was just trying to stay alive, trying to keep baby alive. And it was really status quo for a little bit there. So that was tough. I would say I'm still going through this phase where I'm learning how to balance. I feel less guilty for taking time for myself versus back then, especially now that she's getting her independence a bit more and moving into the toddler phase. That's been good, but it's still a struggle. And I struggle every day because there's the battle of I want to go and do more over here, but I also want to remain being a great mom, and I want to take my kid to the park, and I want to do all these things with her, and I want to go on date nights with my husband. I want to spend time continuing to get to know the new versions of ourselves. So I think what really changed my perspective was dedicating days to certain roles. Some days it works well, some weeks it works well, other weeks it doesn't. But it's like, okay, let's say Monday, if I spend more time being an employee or a business owner, I would make sure that the next day that I spend more time being a mom. Or if we went throughout the whole week where my husband and I really didn't get a chance to connect, I made sure that on the weekend we had some dedicated time that if baby was asleep, we were hanging out, we were watching a movie or something and just like talking. And during the week, just try to find those small pockets of time, just like checking in on each other, asking how each other's days are going. Or now we're really good at just like taking midday calls if we can, of course, and just like checking in. Hey, how's your day going? Are you good? Like, how are you feeling? What's your energy level? How are you planning to spend like the rest of the afternoon? Do I need to make some space for you? It's been interesting kind of learning to evolve the relationship. I've seen in a lot of cases where a baby makes or break a relationship. In a lot of cases, embrace the relationship, especially if the relationship was already rocky. So I'm really glad that I had years with my husband, as my husband, prior to having a baby, so that could keep our relationship going. And I would say that while our community was small and while we don't have that many friends, the ones that we do have are very valuable to us. So we could lean on those friends in that time where we just needed some advice or had questions or just like, hey, like, have you experienced this? Or hey, should the poop really be this color? Or, hey, it's been 3 days since she's had a poop. So having that community was helpful. Even just like some local mom groups as well was really helpful for me. And when I started to find my stride and build my confidence, I was actually able to start sharing the advice and sharing what I knew and what I experienced with other moms. And I could be a resource to other first-time moms. And even my husband being a resource for first-time dads. So shout out to all our friends who had babies after us that we were able to support through their process and give recommendations of everything that worked for us, tools, tech, baby products wise, to try this trick for gas or try this trick for teething. So yeah, that was when I knew we were getting to the place where we were parents. So for so long, I kept telling everyone, they're like, oh, how's it going? I was like, well, I don't know about anyone else, but her parents dropped her off and I'm waiting for them to pick her up like any day now to finally get into the point where I'm like, this is my baby. This is my child. Okay, don't touch her. Okay, thank you. But it took a lot of time for us to get there. And I think there was some amount of guilt that was felt because even though I gave life to her, I found various moments to connect with her, I was still dealing with a lot of postpartum issues and struggling through the mental battle that comes with that, especially the physical battle. When you're fighting depression and just fighting for your life, basically, it takes a lot of energy and requires a lot of you. And you still have to keep going with all of the various titles that you hold: partner, spouse, mom, dad, whoever, employee, business owner. It was a lot. I eventually got to a place where it was just like, okay, I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to introduce my vitamins again, especially when I stopped breastfeeding. When I stopped breastfeeding, there was a crazy hormonal shift that I knew was coming, but I did not know exactly what it would look like. That was a lot once I weaned off breastfeeding, which took a bit of time. I know a lot of moms get sad when it's time to do it, but for me, I was just like, let's get this over with, please. And I did it for 13 months. So I was actually really proud of myself that I was able to do it for that long. Being a pumping mom requires a different level of mental capacity in order to function. Shout out to my crew. Shout out to my husband. Shout out to our nanny for keeping up with those bottles, because I tell you, the amount of parts that are involved to pump just 4 ounces of milk. Story for another day. Now, where am I? Like, let's check in. I'm in a really decent place where I'm starting to enjoy motherhood. I love our girlie. She is definitely a sassy queen and she's just the funniest thing. And I definitely see more of myself in her these days. And it's nice. I'm no longer waiting for her parents to come pick her up. Okay, I am the parent. Finally, I'm claiming that it's me. I'm mom. So that's been good. I definitely didn't rush through any of the phases as she was going through these developmental leaps and such. However, some of them were harder than expected, and I'm glad we made it through. I can definitely give all the resources, and I'll probably save that for another video, all of the baby items that kind of took us through each stage, all of the books that I read just to sort of maintain my sanity, as well as learn about baby leaps and child development, baby-led weaning, all the above, and navigating all of those different challenges as a mom. But if you have any preference on what you want to see first, just drop it in the comments. I'm happy to make the video and give all my tips and tricks. And I know there's endless resources out there already, but maybe I can provide a different POV on what worked, especially because we went a very holistic approach with our baby, everything from baby-led weaning to making sure that processed and refined sugars were made out of her diet, consuming only breast milk for all her nutrients for a very long period of time, to slowly introducing grass-fed, not raw, because I was close, but not quite, milk into her diet, and coming up with various recipes to avoid all the baby food that may have contaminants out there and such. So those can be tips for another day, but let me know what you want to see. I'm happy to share all my knowledge of what I went through. But yeah, so it's been a journey, and this is only phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I don't even know anymore. There's a few more big leaps to come for us. I'm now ready to really enjoy the ride. I'm now ready to meet this new version of myself where I'm at and take it to the next level. Very excited to watch my husband continue to be a great father. So looking ahead, I'm really just looking forward to trying to continue to find balance. Oh, okay. Well, before I go, just want to do like a quick rapid fire session to maybe, or questions to cover anything that I may have left out. So first one, what kind of delivery did you have? I talked about this midway through this conversation. I opted for the C-section. Best decision ever. I've recommended to a few different friends, especially with the different situations that they had going on. And I couldn't be happier. I recovered well. I was up and moving in no time, and I would do it again, gladly. It was easy. And I knew exactly what I was going to get out of the experience. And as someone with, anxiety issues, I wanted to control the narrative as much as possible, and having a cesarean did that for me. So it's not the most optimal choice. Of course, it's a heavily medicated situation. And of course, as a holistic girly, I want to make sure that I offer more natural ways, but birth is already a challenge within itself. And I'm glad in my decision and I'm sticking to it. What was your favorite pregnancy craving? Chick-fil-A lemonade. Now I can't drink it. It's probably the most disgusting thing to me on the planet because it just tastes like syrup. But when I was pregnant, nothing quenched my thirst more than having a nice, very icy lemonade from Chick-fil-A. And which trimester was the hardest? Definitely the first. I lived off saltine crackers. I couldn't keep anything down. I didn't have HG. At least I wasn't officially diagnosed with it. But I could not consume anything. I think I lost roughly 15 pounds in the first trimester just from basically not eating. Top 3 newborn must-have items. I know people hate it, and there's a lot of controversy about it, but Arduna was probably one of the best investments I've ever made in my life. I think everywhere, it was great for me having a C-section. I didn't have to worry about having a car seat and a stroller attachment to worry about. That was definitely a great investment for us. Other really good investments for us was glass bottles. I knew going into this that I wanted to be as PFAS-free as possible for our baby. And glass bottles are game-changing. It warmed really well. It cleaned really well, so it was nice and easy to keep and maintain. Other best investment was my Mom Cozy M5 portable pump. When I got to the point where I could not stand sitting for extended period of times with my Spectra, I tried a few different portable breast pumps, and the Mom Cozy M5 definitely takes the cake. I recommended it to everyone, and should I have another baby, I will probably make that my primary pump. What's one thing you wish you would have packed in your hospital bag? One thing I wish I would have packed in my hospital bag, definitely would have packed some more snacks, because hospital food was disgusting. I'll say it. So would have packed more snacks from home so that I could eat things that I enjoyed and things I was looking for. Favorite self-care ritual in those early days? Getting out of the house. It was just throwing on some clothes, going to stroll with the aisles of Target, or going to a TJ Maxx and just randomly picking up stuff that were cute. Enjoyed it a lot, and it was a nice mental break. And it was good because then I can freely go get things that I needed for baby at that point. And I know we're not friends with Target anymore, okay, but it's what we have in our area. So how do you manage sleep or the lack thereof? I was delirious all the time. I did not get a lot of sleep at night, partially because of dealing with my postpartum anxiety and going through all the meds that were doing weird wonky things with my body, and just in general, taking some naps when I could, sneak those in. I was a zombie. I'm still a zombie. I don't know what sleep is anymore. Best snacks for nursing. I didn't really believe in the snacks for nursing. I would say the thing that kept me going the most was staying hydrated, body armor, and water, and sticking to my pumping schedule. What surprises you the most about postpartum life? What was most surprising was just when you got comfortable with the version of your baby, they were going through the next leap. So you're getting a different version of your baby. And it was always surprising, even though I had read all the books and knew what to expect. Those leaps and those regressions. How did you prepare for the nursery on a budget? My husband and I talked, we created a budget. I want to say it was somewhere like $4 or $5K, just like everything that baby needed. And that was to cover anything that we didn't get off our registry. So we are savers, so we just took the funds from our savings. And then I guess last question is, what app or gadget made my life easier? I lived by the Huckleberry app. It was really helpful to track all the baby's poop and feeds and diaper changes and my pumping, just so that we weren't playing a guessing game if she started to cry. We also learned all of the cries as well. I think there's like 4 or 5 cries. So learning the cries are really helpful as well, because that kind of helped us to know if she was hungry versus really tired or whatever the case may be. So learning the cries, the Huckleberry app, we still use it to this day to track. So we're never playing the guessing game of what's going on with baby. We still use the app. And we had this new, wasn't a fan, story for another day. And our Nanic camera, love the thing down. Okay, highly recommend it. I know everyone's concerned about all of the electromagnetic waves and stuff. So with having the cameras and people being able to hack into your cameras, secure your Wi-Fi as much as you can and limit the uses. We try to turn it off when baby's not in the nursery, just so that there's not a lot of EMFs floating around the room. And we're going to use it for nap times and such, assuming she's in her crib these days, because progression. We'll talk about that another day. What else? a shusher. The shusher, the red and white one, I never thought I would say that I'm a big fan, but I'm a big fan, and it was highly, highly recommended by so many moms. And I bought it and recommend it to everyone. So the shusher, Huckleberry app, our Nanit was definitely a big one for us. And investing in really quality diapers. We are Millie Moon stands in this house and probably will be for a really long time. It's convenient, accessible, and relatively clean. All right. Well, that's all I got for this video for today. Hopefully this was relatable for you and you feel supported or have an idea of what motherhood entails and what it will look like for you if you're about to be a first-time mom, or if you're in a newborn trenches. Just know that things will change, that you will make it through. When you're in the thick of it, it feels really, really hard and you're extremely tired. But once you get through that phase, things start to become really beautiful. And as you watch your baby grow and develop, it's going to be, so much fun. I'm looking forward to toddler phase. I know that the terrible twos and, the three-nager is upon us, but yes, it's been nice meeting new versions of her and meeting new versions of ourselves as we grow and develop with her as well. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in my next video. Take care, everyone. Bye.